The feedback was where we started, really, because a lot of this research on formative assessment was about different kinds of feedback. And what we found was that most of the feedback that's common in schools is the least helpful in terms of what psychologists have found. So there's lots of different ways of looking at feedback, but a very important way of thinking about feedback is whether it's ego involving or task involving. So if you say to students that you did very well, you were one of the best pieces of work, you did one of the best pieces of work in the class, that's ego involving because it focuses on that person's position in the class. Whereas if you get feedback that says things like, well, this is what you need to do to improve, then that focuses on the task. And what the research shows very clearly is that ego involving feedback is rarely effective and in fact can lower achievement. So when students get grades, when they can compare themselves with each other, where they get praise, the effects are usually, or often zero, and sometimes negative. In other words, that in many cases, rather than giving that kind of praise, you would have been better off shutting up and giving no feedback at all. Students given that kind of praise do less well than students given no feedback at all. But what the research also shows very clearly is the conditions under which feedback is successful. So the research shows, for example, that when the feedback focuses on what students need to do to improve, and in particular how to go about it, then you get very large impacts on student achievement. So the challenge for teachers is to take these very broad principles that I've outlined and work out what it means in their own classroom. The way I summarize all this is to say that I think that good feedback causes thinking. The really important thing is that when a student gets a piece of feedback, the first thing they do is think, not react emotionally, not disengage, but think. That's very important because what the research on student motivation shows is that when they're faced with a task or with a response to a piece of work, students basically make a choice between deciding either to protect their well-being or to engage in activities that will actually help them grow as individuals and in their achievement. And if the first reaction of a student is to protect themselves and to restore their sense of well-being, what you'll find is that students focus on the things that will do that for them and they won't focus on the learning. So what we need to do is to give students feedback that helps them move forward, give them feedback that makes it clear that ability is incremental rather than fixed. Because if we send the message to students that ability is fixed, then if you're confident of being able to engage in the task, you'll go for it for the brownie points. But if you're not confident or think that you might actually fail when other people will succeed, you will disengage, and basically you will decide that you'd rather be thought lazy than stupid.